Scenic Hotel Group, a place to stay no matter your staycation. From the Legacy Collection, Scenic Hotels, Suites and Resorts, and Heartland Hotels. Find your place to stay at scenichotelgroup.co.nz.
Do you remember this fella? James Haskell.
Would involved again. Seki trying to get a boot on it.
Second row's going very well together, Miles.
There's Haskell. Oh, he's gone through, straight through. Might want to take this all the way through. He is! Haskell! Warwick didn't fancy it. Haskell did.
That was James Haskell scoring a try. He's since retired from rugby, obviously spent a stint at the Highlanders back in 2012. As I mentioned earlier, he's done MMA. He has been a DJ, or still is a DJ. He's got a set coming up relatively shortly. He's a stand-up comic. He goes and tours around the UK telling jokes about rugby and stories about his rugby career. He's published several books. He's also a rugby pundit on the telly in the UK. He has done a lot of things since he called it quits, and he joins us now on Weekend Sport. James, thanks for joining us. How are you? Thanks for your time here on News Talk ZB.
I'm very well. Thank you for having me. It's good to be back on New Zealand radio.
I appreciate you making the time. You're a busy man in retirement. Just having a look at your website. You don't struggle to fill the days at the moment, do you?
No, I don't. I mean, my wife's probably not that happy about my life choices to be all over the place. And also, I've just become a dad as well. I've got a 6-month-old who you might hear screaming in the background at some point. But yeah, look, I'm busy. I'm enjoying life. I've always done lots of things, but actually they're all kind of around the central theme of kind of performing or storytelling. I'm obviously a bit of a show off and an attention seeker, as my wife kind of reminds me. And I, the DJing and the podcasting and the speaking and the live shows and the stand-up stuff is all around that kind of similar theme, really.
We often hear about players maybe struggling to transition into retirement. Did you have a clear idea when you quit the game that you wanted to do that, try lots of different things, or were you a bit sort of stuck in terms of what you wanted to do post the game?
I mean, actually, I think it's a really interesting one to talk about on New Zealand radio, because I think, I always worry about some of the players, like some of the All Blacks players, for example, because, you're very rarely do you have the GOATs. You've got Dan Carter and Richie McCaw, right? And obviously then you've got Martin Onu and Conrad Smith, and he's got these other guys, but there's only so many spaces to fill. New Zealand's a small country. And, yes, being an All Black is an amazing status, but there's only so many coaching jobs. There's only things you can do. And culturally, England has it, but I think New Zealand's probably even more sort of into it with the tall poppy syndrome. Everyone's got to be humble. Nobody puts their head over the parapet. Nobody likes anyone showing off. I think some of it comes from the Māori heritage and the Pacific Island heritage as well. It's very being humble and, family first and stuff, etc. is all very part of the culture. So ultimately, I'm interested to see what happens. That's why I love someone like Ardi Severe, because he is broken the mold really a little bit. I think he's incredible rugby player first and foremost, which is what everyone loves. But he's also a brilliant podcaster, does his TikTok videos, is out there, has a clothing range, does stuff with his brother. And I think that's the way to go. I think there's nothing wrong. And I think the reason he gets away with it is because it always backs it up on the field. I'd like to see some of the guys who don't necessarily. In my case, I knew kind of what I wanted to do, but all my stuff was public facing, So ultimately, when I retired 2019 and went to the World Cup, did the I'm a Celebrity, get me out of here, was training for that MMA for that first fight. I spent a year doing it. Then COVID happened, and basically I couldn't speak, I couldn't attend podcasts, I couldn't do any TV presenting, couldn't DJ. So I basically had a whole period of time of kind of work out what to do. And then I decided, well, I'll hustle, I'll write a book, I'll start up another podcast, I'll start doing stuff, making things happen. And then over the years, it's kind of fallen into what I wanted to do. But all of it is still very public facing. And there's always there was a lot of fear around, what am I going to do? How am I going to pay the bills? And especially when the world closed down, I was a bit stuck because the only qualification I've got are to drive a JCB digger or be a barista. I've got nothing else to my name, which is a bit tricky.
Yeah, it is indeed, and it's certainly an interesting topic that players often talk about post-retirement, struggling to adapt. You're obviously part of different rugby punditry and everything like that. You've got your own rugby podcast, so you've still got time to follow the rugby. The Six Nations so far, 2 weeks in, has been utterly fascinating. Watching it from this end of the world, There's all sorts of storylines. We're seeing different teams adapt to new coaches, everything like that. And then Ireland and France, still at the top of their game. What are you making of the competition so far?
Look, I think the Six. I mean, obviously, I'm biased. I think the Six Nations is probably one of the premier tournaments in the world. I thought I love Rugby Championship. I thought the Tri Nations, was right up there back in the day. With all the magic and the that kind of vibe and the big fluorescent balls and those big moments. You know what I mean? I think that was really very much like the Six Nations was. It was entrenched in history. I think the Six Nations has been great. I think the rugby landscape is insane. It wasn't long ago that Ian Foster was, persona non grata. Everyone was like, get rid of him. I think he was one loss away from it. They're now on a winning streak. Never ever doubt the All Blacks, because I think, actually the most winningest side of all time, having a couple of down moments to reset and regroup has made them probably more dangerous. You've had Eddie Jones was England coach who won a tour to Australia, then got fired, then replaced Dave Rennie, who was under pressure, who came in, had some big moments. He was out the door. And then it's just everything's just move round. Wayne Pivac for Wales won the Six Nations last year. He gets fired. Warren Gatland comes back, and he was struggling a bit at the Chiefs. It's like, mate, it's mad how the landscape changes. I think for me, the Six Nations is very good. I think, Ireland for me look like number one team in the world. I think, they've consistently done it now. I think, I'm always wary about a team who beats the All Blacks once and, everyone goes on about it. The fact is that they beat them consistently down there, which is pretty much unheard of. They've beaten everyone else, and they've beaten the number two side in the world very convincingly. Wales looked better against Scotland, just can't score. They've got all their internal struggles. England, I was disappointed that Eddie Jones went. I think he's one of the best coaches. Well, I think he's the best coach I've ever worked with. I think he's one of the best coaches in the world. He got the best out of me. I've got the utmost respect for him. But if you were going to replace him with anyone, Steve Borthwick was the man for me. I think he had the best skill set to do that. You can see what he's slowly trying to do with England. And they're sort of getting better. I thought they were, good in parts against Italy, good in parts against Scotland. I think they looked tougher in defence. There was a couple of blips in that first game, which made Dwayne van der Merwe, who is great, but made him look like an absolute world beater, scoring a try from which will go down in sort of Six Nations history. So I think it's all to play for now. Next week against Wales and France. Are they going to become better because they've lost this game? I think this will be defining for them because. We know how good they are, but there's a lot of goodwill in France and the clubs are playing ball and everyone's playing ball. But sometimes I've seen in France, if things don't go well, then people can go very insular. Everyone thinks they're a politician. Everyone gets involved. So let's see if they regroup from that. And if they do, then I think they'll be in a very dangerous position to go on to win the World Cup.
You mentioned Eddie Jones there as one of the best coaches you've worked under. He was on our station earlier in the week. He's made a beeline for getting the Bledisloe back and beating the All Blacks later this year. What will he bring to the Wallabies setup, do you think?
Look, I think what's interesting with Eddie is that he culturally understands what's required, in terms of what makes a country tick. He in his own words, I think he was too obsessed with winning when he was younger. And I think I was winning at all costs, which means that he ultimately, had some crazy moments, making players walk home and do all this stuff, and used to have his famous blow-ups and everything else. I think now he understands about the individual nature of coaching and getting the best out of your players. He also looks at what you need to bring as a country. So the first thing he did when he came into England was like, right, we need to go back to what is in our DNA. Like so many coaches come in and try to make an English team play like the All Blacks. The All Blacks play like the All Blacks because that's what they can do. And, you can't retrofit that on. You can maybe endeavour to have, forwards, spin like Ed Dane Coles-esque play. But if you don't have the players to do that, you can't force them to do it. And so ultimately, Eddie came back and was like, right, I want to go back to really amazing set piece. Number one set piece in the world, number two set piece was scrum and line-out. And ironically, what lost us the World Cup was our set piece wasn't up to scratch. What lost Eddie his job was scrum against Africa, losing 5 scrums. Doesn't matter what else you think is going on. 5 scrums at international level, you can't win. And a power play with defence, basically beat other teams up, and the attack will take care of itself. I think he's done the same thing with Australia. He's going back and bringing a bit of pride back into Australia, a bit of confidence, a bit of arrogance, creating that rivalry. Australians notoriously they live in a beautiful country, got beautiful people, they're incredible at sport. They've been they're a bit quieter these days. They want to get back to that aggressive mentality, and they're very, very skillful players. I looked at the Australia squad the other day, and I'm like, there's some mad talent there. So I think he'll get back to their DNA of what they want to do. He's great at turning stuff around pretty quickly, and he loves to talk and empower the team around him. So when he took over, we were always, everyone talks about English arrogance, but actually we're quite humble and apologetic. We're apologetic because no one really likes us. Apologetic because of 700 years of empire building around the world. So we don't really have a national identity, genuine. We're all coming from different cultures, a melting pot. The Welsh are the Welsh, the Irish are the Irish, the All Blacks are the All Blacks, Australia's Australia. England is a bit of everything, and we're a bit worried about upsetting anyone else, but yet we're still seen as arrogant. And Eddie wanted us to be a bit more arrogant. We started being confident, but being confident in a respectful way. And I think he'll do exactly the same thing with Australia. He'll harness them. He'll train them hard. He'll make them have fun. He'll, knows how to get the best out of those players, and he'll get those young boys firing, and he'll take a couple of projects under his wing, like he did with Kyle Sinclair, like he did with Ellis Genge, and move him on to the next level.
Super Rugby starts here this weekend. I think it's been about a decade since you played for the Highlanders. Do you look back on that time fondly?
Yeah, 100%. I wish I'd done more. I absolutely love my time in Highlanders. Living in St Clair, opposite in the beach, also opposite the beach. It was the best experience. So traveling around, playing with some incredible guys, and just, for me, it was amazing. I wish I'd done more, really, because it was so good. And I'd only ever experienced Super Rugby watching Sky TV, seeing highlight reels, seeing the Blues, seeing Dougie Howlett, Carlos Spencer, McCaw, Dan Carter, the Hurricane, Nono, all these guys doing stuff that we couldn't even comprehend. And I wanted to go and see, could I hack it? And I did, and I went well, but I wanted more of it. And actually, if one player from Wasps hadn't made a tackle and saved Wasps and they'd gone down the Premiership, they would have got relegated, and I would have stayed. And in the dying moments of the very last game, Tom Barndale, who's not known for his tackling, actually tackled someone over the line. They dropped the ball, and I then left because Jamie Joseph wanted to keep me. And actually, ironically, the next year the wheels fell off a little bit because I think he got Nonu in, he got a load of players in, and probably the thing about the Highlanders that makes them so unique is they're just tough men. Not massive superstars. There have been some. Aaron Smith, was the best number 9 in the world, and he still is, I think. Just behind maybe Dupont at the moment because he's insane. But had some amazing players. But the grit and the kind of Highlanders way and that country folk kind of shooting, rugged sort of stuff has been their identity, and I loved being part of that. I was looked after like a dream. I just wish I'd got more time. I probably wish I hadn't got banned for 4 weeks as well, which is a bit of an annoying one.
What's the view on Super Rugby up there? Because it's been through so many iterations now, and it's sort of probably just rebuilding. That maybe it's trying to get back to a place that it was, perhaps 10 years ago or so.
Look, it's one of those things. When I actually went over to New Zealand, one of the things I found was that not a lot of guys knew what we were doing over here. I remember I did a funny video interviewing everyone, all the players, what they thought of English rugby, and it was like, everyone was like, maul, pick and go, maul, pick and go. They didn't really know about any of it because it's not shown on TV. Whereas we used to have, I think we still do a certain stuff, the Super 15 played out, so people would see it a lot more. We were a lot more familiar about it. But we would sort of look at you guys. You weren't necessarily looking at us, apart from maybe the international scene. I love it. I think I think the rivalries and stuff are amazing. I mean, the Crusaders just every year. I mean, I'm very jealous that Pablo Matera went to go down there and play, and he was awesome. I messaged him at the time saying, mate, that's an absolute dream come true to go down there and to do that. I love the Highlanders. Crusaders was always kind of a team when I was younger that I always wanted to play for. And I tried my best. I kept trying to hit people up to get me in there. It just unfortunately was not the case. I mean, because they sort of grow Whitelock brothers down there, so yes, they've got enough back row spaces to last a lifetime. But I think it's a great tournament. I think it's going to take a bit of time. The South African teams have obviously moved away, which has again taken a bit of some of the identity away. I tell you why, because from my perspective, when you played a South Africa side, it was like a test match. I mean, I played the Stormers, played the Sharks, and it was it was that level of intensity. New Zealand side was very fast, very physical, very intense, and Australia side was sort of somewhere in between. But I love the fact that it's a franchise model. I love the fact that you can play a certain style. There's no relegation. I think the razzmatazz around it, I just think it needs a bit more promotion. It probably needs a bit more investment. It needs some, some simplicity. I think it just needs to get a new identity now that South African sides aren't in it.
And James, just finally, your new book is out. I know you've written before. What's this one about? It's about taking control of your life.
Yes, it is. Yeah. So, it's going to sound very self-aggrandizing, but this is my 6th book that I've written. To look at me, you wouldn't believe I could even write one. I can barely colour in within the lines, so let alone write a book. But no, the last 2 I wrote were autobiographical. One was called What a Flank, and one was called Ruck Me. I talk about my time in New Zealand. I talk about my kind of life, and it was all stories. It was no nonsense. It was all the fun stuff. None of the, we're playing the All Blacks at Twickenham, and it's 5 minutes down, and I tackled my core, and he looked at me. There's none of that nonsense. Yeah. It's like all the fun stuff. But off the back of it, one of the things that people quite enjoyed was the resilience part, the kind of dealing with ups and downs. The no mistakes attitude, looking to get better, how I dealt with it. So there was a book off the back of that I wrote called Approach Without Caution. And it's kind of 5 pillars essentially to take control of your life, especially in 2023, where I think we live in a bit of an excuse-based culture. I think we like to blame everybody else. I think we, we're championing mediocrity, and I think we're very confused about lots of stuff. And it's how basically to take all the stuff I've learned from working with some of the best coaches, psychologists, therapists, business people in the world, and putting them into a thing that I think you can continually revisit. It's not like, that book The Secret, where you ask the universe something, you draw a picture of a boat and you think about it every day, and the universe gives you a boat. It's nothing to do with that. It's actually like, here's the reality of life. No, not everything's born equal. You've got to work hard. It's not anyone else's fault. If you don't like your life, it's down to you. How do you fix it? How do you move forward? And especially with mental health, understand that it's important to talk, but it's also important to, it's important to match that with action. And I think especially a lot of men, don't do that. And I think they bottle everything up, and it's the biggest killer of men under 40, suicide. And I think it's important that someone like me, who looks like an alpha male, can turn up and say, I've been a psychologist since I was 17. If you want to improve your life, you have to work on it every day. And if you've got depression, that never goes away. It's how quickly you get back on track after you've felt bad. And so it seems to be going well. People seem to enjoy it. And it's also written in my sort of no-nonsense way.
Excellent, James. Hey, look forward to having a read of that. Thank you so much for joining us on News Talk ZB across New Zealand. Go well. Look forward to catching up soon.
Thanks, mate.
Hello, I'm Francesca Rudkin.
And I'm Louise Airy, and we're excited to be working with the New Zealand Herald on our new podcast, The Little Things.
So Louise and I have been friends for probably over 13 years now, and we've been through it all: kids, relationships, health crises,
menopause.
Let's not get into that just yet.
But I think we can both agree that there are times we just wish we had one place to go for some explanations on what's going on with our bodies, our kids, and the relationships in our lives.
And this podcast is all about those little things that women need to know about getting older, raising kids, staying healthy, and taking care of yourself at whatever age and stage you're at.
So join us every Saturday to hear from the experts and get all the advice and tips you need.
Listen to The Little Things at nzherald.co.nz or follow us at iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts.